What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Team Never Quit podcast. As always, thank you guys for listening and watching, and please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. So today, before we get to our special guest, let's kick it off with our usual Patreon question of the day, which is, what is the weirdest hobby that you've ever tried?
This is for you too, Nick. You got it. So, man, we just flashed this question out. Yeah,
it's a
little jarring. Every now and again, a question will come through that you got to put some thought into, and sometimes, if you put after a while, you're like, "Oh, I definitely know the answer to that now."
Hobby.
Good God, I have to think about that one. Oh man.
I've always been like a weird hobby person. As a kid, I wanted to try coin collecting, stamp collecting. I would collect random like dried flowers. I've always been that person that's a collector of things.
You're nostalgic for sure.
I'm very nostalgic.
You could also make it like a cool hobby, like a unique hobby, I feel like. So anything that's just kind of different and coolish.
I think mine is beekeeping. It's not for everybody, but I love beekeeping. I love getting in there and checking on the bees. I love harvesting the honey. I love planting pollinators around. Like, I love the whole spectrum of beekeeping. So I think that's mine.
What do you got, brother?
It's actually one that I kind of came across recently. And it's kind of addicting, but it's kind of geeky. Like metal detecting.
Oh, I like that.
I always thought that was pretty
Really?
silly, dude.
Like
I wasn't expecting you to say that, but I actually have one of those, so I know what you're. I know what you're. You know, especially if you find something. I think that's kind of like hitting the first golf shot pretty solid. You're like, oh, it's kind of got me, you know. And if you find something, that's cool, man.
So I was in the Carpathian Mountains, which are in West Ukraine. And there are old World War I battlefields out there.
Oh, yeah.
So we were going through that thing with a metal detector, and you could find like old artillery shells, like bullets, like knives, and all sorts of like wild stuff. And it's been buried there for like over 100 years. And it's always been fascinating me, like kind of like the architecture and history and stuff is always something that appealed to me. So I thought that was like super cool.
That is awesome.
I can't imagine what's buried out there because a lot of that stuff's still untouched, right? Like, you can't get back in there.
Completely, yeah.
If you like that kind of stuff, I have a book for you for your downtime that you've got so much of. American Gun by Chris Kyle. Before he died, he had written this book, and he went through the history of all of the guns from the American Revolution, and it went through like each battle and how the guns kind of shaped the battles, and how, like, it's really interesting, and he goes into detail about all of the ammunition and all that stuff. It's really cool, and the history that's wrapped around it.
What about you?
I don't know about a weird hobby, but I would say a hobby of mine is collecting a little knick-knack from every country that I go to. So I've got just a whole area of my closet that is just kind of a shrine to every single destination I've been out of country.
Yeah, the grandparents did the magnets.
Yeah.
On the fridge. Going to grandma's house and it's completely head to toe.
Boise, Idaho.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess I've been thinking about it since that's kind of what I want to go. I guess stickers. I collect stickers. I'm kind of a sticker nerd.
And patches.
And patches. That's a military thing, I think. Mm-hmm. But if we like go back to the old school thing, it'd probably be comics.
Yes,
and
you
baseball
are a
cards.
comic person.
I am.
And you're a nostalgic toy person.
I am. So
like a vintage toy person.
Right. I can't believe we said that out loud, but yeah, that's the thing.
So
that's all right, though.
Marcus likes like the old Transformers, the old Spider-Man.
From a kid, you know, when you were a kid.
Man. Those kind of things.
All right, that's good. Let's get this going.
Let's get into it. So today we have got a really great guest for you guys. Nick Allard had been living a normal life in Austin, Texas during the onset of the war in Ukraine when he suddenly experienced two extraordinary events that really gave him a new life perspective, compelling him to leave to Ukraine just a few weeks later in hopes of telling stories of those in need. In Ukraine, Nick met a man whose life had been torn apart by the war, and he created a film around his account called Dima. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Right, pleasure to be here.
All right, bro, you're a Texas boy?
I'm a California dude, bro.
Okay.
I'm an Austin, Texas boy, if that counts.
That is definitely
That's our melting pot from where, that's where our California residents go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the mix. Yeah, I was part of that little cult that's in the middle of that little city there.
Yep. Yep.
Could give us a little background on you. Where'd you grow up, and just a little tidbit about you.
So I grew up in Carlsbad. So I kind of grew up in kind of like that military town kind of vibe. You know, early years were in San Diego, and then eventually went up to Carlsbad. I was an athletic type kid most of the time growing up. So this kind of like journalism, war stuff, that was always there as a kid. But I mean, athletics was always like the king for me when I was growing up, and I did that all through my childhood. Eventually went on to walk on and play football in college as well. So that was all, you know, kind of just my life growing up was just like, as a kid, obsessing on war movies, and then as I got older, it transformed into like that athlete type. And once that ended, it kind of like transitioned back into kind of what I'm doing now. So it's kind of all come kind of full circle.
I was going to ask you that. A lot of the athletes, when you guys get into your sport, you're so focused on what you have to be doing, but there is something else that keeps your attention. There's like a hobby or like the movies, the war movies. So there was something, it was parallel with you. You just weren't into it yet.
Yeah, just like it takes up all your time. I mean, like being an athlete, like that's all you really know. And that's all that's kind of like, you know, really like validating in your kind of space, like when you're going up through elementary school and high school.
Yeah, especially at that age.
There's no like war movie club, right? You're going in there like, nah, I'm busting out weights and tackling people. That's kind of like the normal thing and kind of like the communal thing to do, right? So it was always kind of the thing, because that communal feeling was kind of more, you know, important than anything, you know, growing up as a kid. Like, you know, it's the football team, you're with friends through that way. So that was just, it was always at the back of my mind. But, you know, obviously athletics is always going to take precedent in the kind of society that, you know, obviously we have in America, for sure.
Oh, sure. Civilian warfare. That's where we do it. On the football field.
Absolutely.
That's so we don't kill each other.
What college did you go to?
I went to Cal.
Oh, nice.
Berkeley, right?
Yeah, I went to Cal Berkeley, and then I spent like one little stint at San Diego State for like a year, and then went back to Cal and finished up my degree up there.
Nice. What brought you to Austin?
Honest to God, it was during COVID, and I was bored, and I was like using like the U.S. News Golden Report, like top cities for like young peeps, and I was like, you know, let's just give this thing a go. And it was like that, between that and Nashville, and then I got to Austin, and I was like, yo, this place is kind of cool. You know, it seems like the young and hip place to be. So I said, you know, let's give it a go. And I was living with my parents for like a few months during COVID, and I just wanted to get out. I was like, dude, let's go to Texas and do that, you know. It's very nostalgic. I was listening to that Matthew McConaughey book, Green Lights, on the whole way. So I was like, bro, I'm getting that.
You can listen to anything Matthew says. It's good.
As we're going into this.
Yeah, he's one of our Texas rules, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about?
I'm rolling through West Texas when I'm listening to that book, too.
Right, that's the best place to do it, because West Texas is huge.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
All right, then what?
Vast.
Yeah,
it's
vast. Great word.
That's
a great word.
too, because it was all snow, like, you know.
Really? Snow in West Texas?
Man, dude, we had the last few years, we've had the weirdest weather.
When I was driving through there, it was just nothing but snow, so it was kind of tripping me out, because, you know, when you're a Southern California kid, you don't know jack about Texas. You're just watching cowboy movies all the time, and all of a sudden you're walking through here, it's like blanketed with snow. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? You know, it's kind of a trip, you know.
Like, I thought these Rocky Mountains would be a lot more rockier, right? We don't normally get that.
Yeah, we're the horses and stuff, you know.
Well, I guess that was during the
crazy weather season.
Weird freeze that we had.
Biblical freeze. It snowed and stayed. That's when you came through. All right, that makes sense.
Yeah, I was actually in Austin during all of that. That was a super wild experience for me too.
Yeah, because normally it's not like that. We normally do not have those kind of temperatures. So that was a weird year. That was a very weird year. And it sounds like your year got weirder. Can you tell us about that? What happened in Austin?
So I got to Texas in 2021, and then kind of after acclimating it, eventually got into 2022. And, I was kind of like an entrepreneur. That's kind of what my job was. And I spent most of my life was absorbed by that. And right around 2022, I started diving deep into me. Cause obviously I was having stuff going on that, mentally I wasn't feeling right, and kind of do a lot of introspection and kind of diving deep into that. And, I went on and, doing an entrepreneur thing. I went and flew out to Peru and did an ayahuasca retreat out there, which was really introspective.
Oh yeah, that's one way of saying that. You were soul searching is what you were doing.
Oh my goodness, yeah, it's the most strong soul searching in the world. I mean, goodness, that stuff kicks your butt for sure.
It definitely has a purpose, for sure.
Yeah. When you go out there, people kind of look at me and dude, are you some sort of hippie? I'm like, dude, these hippies got some nuts to go out and do that thing, dude. This thing absolutely just kicked my butt. But by the end of it, it was all in, for you,
right?
Instead of
at you. That's right.
Just doing it to get high or anything like that. If that makes sense. And it was really introspective and really helped. But came back to Austin after that, and kind of was in that little euphoric phase after the ayahuasca where you feel
yep.
Everything's great and everything's good. I'm gonna start teaching people kind of what I've learned through this introspection. I start slamming these crazy life coaching videos on the internet, and all my friends were kind of perplexed what the hell this guy's doing. He's being a true guy from Austin, slamming all these life coaching videos on the internet. But at the end of the day, I felt like it wasn't the right thing. And a lot of my time that was spent doing that, I remember just peeking at Ukraine all the time, just checking the news and peeping at it, what's going on here, or not even checking the news, but checking these discrete channels where you're not necessarily getting what's shown on the news.
Right.
And I remember looking at these these discrete channels and thinking to myself, why is the news not showing this? This is not coming across my feed on NBC or ABC or any of the bigger news outlets. And how is this sneaking past them? Because it was brutal. And I started to lean towards the prospect of maybe I should go there and try telling people this. But how I was thinking back in my mind, you're quitting. You're just going to be quitting this idea that you set out on to be a life coach and stuff. So this stuff's a distraction. And I kept pushing through it and kept fighting, through it, thinking that this was the right choice. But obviously on one day, everything just kind of came to a full stop, and kind of made me think about why I was really here and what I'm supposed to be doing in the first place. And obviously in the video that Hunter showed, talked about it. It's kind of the woman shows up to my door, hands zip tied behind her back. I have to go out, grab her to the house, come grab a pair of scissors and cut it loose. And
yeah. So can you, for people that don't know that story, can you give us walk through that day where you were living in Austin and someone just showed up at your door?
Yeah, so I was at my house and I was just knocking out emails on my computer, and all of a sudden I just hear this knock on my door, and I'm it's 12 o'clock, so it's not a routine in the afternoon, maybe a friend's coming. I wasn't expecting any guests. I'm oh, someone's coming here to try and sell me solar panels or something. That's what's going through my mind as I'm going up to the door. And all of a sudden there's this voice just saying it's mumbling, and I can't depict it. I'm who's mumbling? I look at the people, and it's just the people's dirty, so I can't really see very well through it. And it's just this black and brown figure, just with their head down. And then all of a sudden I just kept hearing, please open the door, please open the door, please open the door. And I'm okay, and open it up, and I turn around, she's got these zip ties firm behind her back, and she's saying, help, 3 guys had tried to rape me, I need you to get me out of this right now. And I'm just shook at that point. I'm like, oh my God. So I just dart back in the house, come out with the scissors and start cutting away. And it's just, it was completely unexpected. It's just something that, it made me stop everything, right? It's just not something that where I was going to continue going down the same route I was going. And, it's kind of the day that I had there.
That is an insane story though. How old was she?
I couldn't tell. I didn't know. I don't even remember her name. And it was just like a thing she might've been like in her early 30s, my guess.
And you called the police or what? What
they were already looking for her.
Oh, they were?
Because she had been going from houses. Like she went to like 4 different houses and she was knocking on doors and everybody saw her and said, no, you got to get out of here. Like, this is too much for me or whatever had happened. Because there was a restaurant down the street she went into with the same predicament, saying help. Everybody freaked out and she just came running back out. And there was a car, someone left their car running in the parking lot. And she got into the car and managed to like maneuver it somehow, but she slammed it into the side of the restaurant and then pulled it out of the restaurant somehow with her hands tied behind her back. Don't know how she did it. And she like screeched it around the corner and then just crashed into something else, got out of the car and started going to other people's houses. And I could still see for me afterwards, it was still haunting for me because I could still see the tire screech marks on the road for like weeks after it had happened. And the dent in the side of the restaurant. But she had went to like 4 houses and they all said, like, no, get out of here, get out of here, get out of here. So it was a very, it made me think like, why? Like all these houses said no, the restaurant said no, and then finally came to mine and it was like a yes. And I still can't tell the story like perfectly because I still think about it and like why all the time, if that makes sense.
So the police were able to get her and help her?
Yeah, they were already like, as soon as I uncut her, I asked her if she like needed me to call the police and she said no. And I'm sitting here like, what do you mean no? Like, you just experienced this. This is like horribly traumatic. You probably want to tell them this. She's like, no, I'm good. She literally walked down the steps. And I'm sitting here like, why? Like, that didn't make any sense to me. But she only made it, like, she only walked like 20 feet and then a patrol car pulled right up. And it was because they were already looking for her. They already got the calls.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a thing where I needed to call them or anything.
Right. And that was it? She just drove out of your life just like she came in there?
I'm such a worrier. Like I would have been up at the police station like, okay, what happened to her? That's crazy.
Yeah.
So she just disappeared out of your life as fast as she came in. That'll change things.
And that's traumatizing for you too, like wondering what happened to her. Where
you got any idea what happened to her?
No, I actually went and requested the police report because I actually was curious as to how the investigation went or what happened. I never knew after that. Like I literally didn't even, like, it was one of those things where like for me, like when things like that happen, I have a tendency like to numb out. And I just went in and sat down and just like everything stopped and I didn't know what to think, and now I'm trying to get more answers as to what exactly happened afterwards, but no, not really.
I hope she's okay. I mean, somebody obviously messed with her bad enough.
Was she dressed?
I don't think she had pants on, no. She just had a t-shirt on.
Ugh, how traumatizing. Well, you obviously were put in her life for some reason. I mean, there was something happened and you were the one to answer that door.
I memean, Austin's weird, dude, but that was crazy.
Yeah, that is nuts.
Yeah.
All right, so then what?
So then everything stopped. Like the life coaching videos or whatever, I just like stopped filming. I was just sitting there and like just a complete numb out. Like it's just not, I couldn't think of what to do or how to think of it. And I literally went to like this week of like reflection. I tried to get my mind off it. I was going to buying tickets to the Willie Nelson 4th of July picnic, hoping that kind of get my mind off the whole thing. Went and saw country songs and tried to like, just everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Just go out there and chill it. But it kept coming back and coming back and coming back and doing all of that. And I think I had, for me, when things like that happen, there's a tendency for me, I have to find a way to assign meaning to it. Otherwise, it's just a thing that happens and just becomes like, you know, like a crutch, if that makes sense. Because like I don't know what could have gotten me over that if I hadn't been able to like assign meaning to something like that, or to give it purpose. And it was a weird gut thing where it was like, this is Ukraine. This is what this is about. Like, this is obvious. And when she came to my door, I was writing an email, and this email was going to go out to like a mentor within this community. And this email would have put me over the edge of where like I'm jumping in with 2 feet into this life coaching idea now. Like, this is it. Like, as soon as I press send on this thing, you know, there's no turning back. I'm a guy that doesn't go back on my word. When I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. So if I put my both feet into this, I'm gonna do it. And as I was drafting that email, I get the knock. And that's what really tripped me out about all of it. I was like, I was about to make that call, and she showed up.
Like, are you ready?
Yeah, well, that's the beautiful thing about if life has a way of stopping you in something. And the good part is you notice that. Don't trip out about it. Don't freak out about it. That's how it's supposed to be. Like, what was the purpose of her coming to your door? So you were sitting there, the one that was going to help her. Because in order to put you right there where you're at right now, there has to be a catalyst. And I mean, you said it a few times now. Like, you're able to see stuff like that. There's a difference between you and a lot of other people. A lot of people can't see those kind of signs. I mean, those are life patterns. If one thing goes wrong, hey, that's a day, all right? Days are hard. They're supposed to be. But when you have 2 and 3, especially over 3, like if it's just constantly pushing you in a certain direction, a lot of people can't pick that up, man. That's why their life gets so difficult. You saw that, and now where you're at, that's your purpose. That's how you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was like the catalyst of me going, but I was hesitant. And obviously like anyone,
you need a little nudge,
something like that.
Well, didn't something else happen after that?
A little nudge.
So didn't you have something else that happened too that would be your other catalyst of going? Yeah.
So it was a weird thing where like I was getting ready. I was like, all right, I'm gonna pull the trigger on this. But the only thing that kept pulling me back was like, I could die doing this. Like, it's not uncommon, especially in Ukraine, to see journalists get killed. I mean, it's a massive full-on country war. Like, people I think at this point, I don't know the exact figure, but I think it might be over 100 journalists have been killed in the war. Yeah. So, you know, going out and doing this, and you can get killed anywhere. There was a journalist that was in her apartment in Kyiv, and a missile struck it and killed her. So like there's things like that do happen. So I was hesitant on making that full commitment, if that makes sense. So that kind of held me back. And as I'm thinking about this, I plan on doing paddleboarding with my friend on Lady Bird Lake. And he was telling me, I was telling him, thinking about what I was going to go do. And he was like, yeah, you could die doing that kind of stuff, right? And I said, yeah, but that's life. I could die anywhere, anytime. Obviously, that's just like the cliche phrase people come up with, and when they're trying to justify a decision, so to speak. So I kind of half meant it. And he was like, you're probably right, dude. And literally, I'm not kidding you. Like 20 minutes after we had that conversation, he falls off his paddleboard and starts drowning. And like he had these black military boots on. And before we went out there, I asked him if he knew how to swim. He was like, yeah, like the half-hearted, like, yeah, no. And he was wearing military boots on a paddleboard. And so the water started sinking into it. And so he was bobbing up and down like this, like this guy is like critical. And so the only thing that saved his life was the leash on his leg. I think that's my idea of what did it. So I'm diving in to pick him up from under the water, and he's just like flapping everywhere. I'm getting like literally almost punched in the face. It might have been his elbow, but it was just hitting me in the face, like trying to get him under control. And front of his tongue, he bit because he was panicking, so there's blood, like it's like coming into my face and going onto the board. They're like trying to get him like on like stable and like holding him up, and like so I have to tread water and then have him in one hand at the same time. And like my legs are just churning like as fast as possible, just like full adrenaline churning the legs, just trying to keep everything going. And then he puts his arm on the side of the board, like trying to propel himself up onto the board and get on. And the weight from the boots like, and combined with him putting it up there, his shoulder just goes click, and he completely dislocates his right shoulder as he's trying to put it on there. So now this guy's got one arm left, and I'm trying to one arm him onto a paddleboard. So like the angles are all off, and I'm thinking like, no, this dude's gonna die if I don't get help, right? Because there's no way I was able to do it by myself. I didn't have enough hands. I need like 2 more to get it done, right? And I remember we were in the middle of Lady Bird Lake, like shore is like 200 meters in the other direction. And I remember just seeing these people up there just slamming hard seltzers and partying. I'm like, yo, you guys need to get over here. Like, this guy's gonna die. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, like get the F over here. And all of these people, like 4 different boards, come paddling over. Some guy gets in the water and like manages to grab him up from under his butt and like propels him onto the board. They tie the board to another one. They start paddling to shore, and fire department was at the shore. They pick him up and then send him to the hospital. And at that moment, it wasn't in that moment where I realized that when I got out of the water, I was like dizzy. I was pretty sure I had like a concussion. In my football days, I knew what it was like. I've had a few of them before, and I was pretty sure that I had one too in that moment. But we eventually get to the hospital. I remember when we put him onto the bed, and he's, they put his shoulder back in, gave him painkillers. I just remember thinking like, this is ridiculous. Like the fact that events like this can happen. This was 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks after that woman had showed up to the door. And it happened after I had been thinking about death for like 2.5 weeks. And I'm like, this isn't God like subtly pushing me somewhere. This is God like, Spartan kicking me off of the edge, telling me to go.
Side kick to the chest.
If that makes.
Oh yeah.
Oh God. So it was a God's Leonidas kick to the chest.
It's unmistakable when it happens to you. There's a difference between all the other stuff and coincidences if you believe in those, and then there's a straight kick. You can feel it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like that was actually my first thought when I jumped into the water. Was like when I jumped in there, I was literally, it wasn't like, oh, I got to save my friend or anything like that. It was literally the save my friend was a second thought, and that came a second later. But the first second, all I thought was, God, what the hell do you want, dude? Like, what is this? Like, this is ridiculous. And then I went into the mode of, all right, we got to pick this guy up and move him, right? And that to me was, the defining moment. As soon as I left that hospital, I was like, I'm gone, dude. Like, there's nothing that's going to be able to convince me otherwise. Like, this has to happen. Why and what I'm going to do, I have no idea. But I booked a plane to Poland, I think 3 days after that, I was gone,
That's how it works.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Feels good though. Once you know that your purpose sets back in, and there's no denying it, when everything's kind of locked straight, it's a lot better. People think it's scary. It's not scary.
Yeah, once the train's on the tracks, like obviously there's always the prospect of something happening.
Oh yeah.
Like,
So it
is what it is.
When you get to Poland, you have no game plan. What happens then?
Oh, zero plan. I just remember going in there and thinking like, I know how to use a camera. I had, made all these little crazy videos and knew how to edit a little bit. And I was like, maybe I'll just go tell stories. And when I got into Poland, it wasn't really much of I wasn't doing any work there. I was kind of just doing a little bit of exploring. I was in Poland maybe 2-3 weeks, kind of like getting an idea of what Europe is like. Because I'd never been to Europe in my life. The only country I'd ever been to is South America. So this is my first time in a country like that.
So you're just staying at hotels and walking around?
Hostels, dude.
Yeah, hostels, yeah.
Yeah.
Just bunking at hostels and meeting people. And it was a very interesting awakening for me. I got to Poland, and there was this, there were refugees everywhere. And when you hop in that situation, it's just like you get a glimpse of what it's really like to be there. And there's these people that are telling you these stories about like, we lost our house, we lost our home, we have nowhere to go. This is all we have. Like, we're bringing our kids in here with just a backpack apiece because they had to blitz out of the country when the invasion started, and their whole families are having to live in college dorm rooms. and just thinking about like how critical the situation was, and that really spoke a lot to me. And I think initially I was kind of questioning, like, what the hell am I doing here? Like I'm in this hostel in Poland, and there are these people, and like it just doesn't make sense. And like I remember one day when I was having those thoughts, all of a sudden I walk into this room and there's this woman like playing her guitar, and then she starts telling stories about how she had to hear like missiles flying over her house every day, and it drove her crazy to the point where she had to go get a break, and by going to Poland just to get a break from it and then go back. And I'm thinking, like, these people are dealing with these kind of things. Like I didn't even know. And after that, went down south, and I think the next place that I went to, which was interesting fitting, was Auschwitz, in southern Poland. Yeah. And visiting that, and to feel the energy that place has was something unlike I've ever felt. Like, even being in Ukraine, I remember specifically I had gotten there at like 6 a.m, was by myself, and I was the first one in. There was nobody there. I was the only person that other than the gate attendant, I was the only person in the whole camp. And it was foggy, and it was like early in the morning and chilly. Yeah, right. And it's
what you think it would look like. Mm-hmm. Like what you just described, if I went there, and from hearing the stories about it, that's what I would think the weather would look like.
Like on Band of Brothers,
it just
there's that fog.
There's just like, I don't know if you ever noticed, like there's just places that carry energy. That you can feel.
Oh, we notice.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we notice.
Yeah. It was one of them, man. And like you hear the details, and you get to see. They have photos of where specific things happened, and it's like we're looking at the photo of like a Jewish woman with her son, like walking down this path to a gas chamber, and you're literally looking at it exactly where it happened because the photo was taken exactly in that same spot. Or seeing like people, burning bodies after they had been gassed in this field, and you look into the field, and you like, I look at the photograph and I line up like the angles of the fence posts on the outside, and you see that the fence posts look exactly the same, and the only difference is that the field is green and there's no mud there anymore. And like seeing that line up, to me, it's just like it's jarring in a lot of ways. And I almost felt like it was setting me up. Like when I was doing these visits, it was like trying to show me like this is what we're dealing with. Maybe not necessarily, a Holocaust, but like the human cost and the suffering is coming up. And this is kind of like a warm up for it, if that makes sense. But yeah, that was my Poland experience, and I think a week later, I went into Ukraine.
So talk about that. How'd you get over there from Poland?
You can just hop on a train, go on in. And
all that stuff's still running? All the trains and all the
they're moving those trains back and forth. You can't fly planes in there anymore because they'll blast them out of the sky. So you gotta go in by train. Yeah. And those are usually like 15-hour train rides to get to the capital. But when I had gotten in there, I just remember when I got onto the train, I was just scared out of my mind. I'm like, dude, what the hell? Like,
yeah, okay. I was going to ask you that. As soon as you go in there and you're in a war zone, it's different. If you've never been in one, man, you can feel it.
Hit me was the moment when they started doing the passport checks, and there's just these dudes, Ukrainian dudes, kitted out to the max, like AKs and their magazines and their pouches, and they're like, open up your bags. And I'm like, oh my God, here we go.
Yes, sir. Roger that.
I had never seen this stuff in my life. And they're checking for guns and grenades and anything that you want to be smuggling in. And they're giving you that they're trying to intimidate you. It's obviously it's their job.
Oh, it's a war environment.
Intimidate you.
Yeah.
When the men throw their armor on and put those shells on their head, everything like that, there's an attitude that comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure. You knew that. That's where you see it, first of all.
So what was in your bag? What do you pack when you're going into a war zone?
I had, the thing is, I try to pack light clothes-wise, I mean, I just buy the kind of the merino wool clothing, so you only have to wear like 2 shirts everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And only have to bring 2 shirts and a few pairs of underwear and all that. But the other bag obviously just had like a helmet and a vest, and then a camera. Other than that, it was just kind of like basic living stuff. I lived out of one backpack. If I wasn't going into Ukraine, I could live with everything out of one bag, out of a backpack. But when you go into Ukraine, you have to bring a bag for the body armor and the helmet. So that's the other bag, if that makes sense.
All right. So where do you stay when you're there? When you showed up? And okay. So those are still open. Another thing is that you got to imagine the in Ukraine, they're at war, so they're not focused on entertainment and all that
travel
and tourism anymore.
No, not at all. And usually the people that you run into there, it's a totally different vibe. So like when you're in hostels in Ukraine, it's not so much how do you say it? It's not so much like the general like kid from like Italy who's on vacation, he wants to get drunk with his friends.
Yeah.
That you kind of see in like hostels in like France or in Italy. It's like dudes from all over the world that want to fight. People that are all over the world that want to volunteer, humanitarian people. You also get your fair share of even journalists at times. So it's anything that you would see in like a war country. Like they all kind of come into like this little like place together.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting experience where it's like when you're backpacking around Europe, you get all like the kids on vacation. When you're backpacking in Ukraine, you get like every person from every walk of life that's involved in war comes into this one little cocoon.
One spot, yeah. They all show up.
Yeah, so it's like a weird, like it's almost like I've never been to a military base, but I'm assuming it's like as if they like made it into like a barracks of like a military base and just threw in all the hodgepodge of people, if that makes sense.
That's what the military is. And then you train them, and that's how it works.
Like you've got your admin,
it's all there.
Your medical people.
They all flock together.
Yeah, and your fighters, and that's crazy.
All right, so how long did it take you before you found your battle rhythm? Before you started getting into what you know you're supposed to do?
It took me a few months. I think like the first 2 months, I was just trying to get accustomed to what I was doing. I was just trying everything. I'm like, maybe I should just go film.
You didn't speak the language, right?
I can speak Spanish, Russian, a little bit of Ukrainian now too.
How was it when you first got there? Was that the case?
No.
So the language barrier is a big deal.
I didn't speak it at all.
What's up, guys? So we all know that maintaining momentum in our workout routines can be a real challenge, especially whenever we hit those pesky plateaus in progress and exercise. Everyone knows that working out is full of positives. You sleep better, you look better, and most importantly, you feel better. But as you get stronger, those same routines just don't cut it anymore. That's where Fitbod comes in, and let me tell you, it has been a game changer for me. The personalized workouts, they're tailored to your goals, your abilities, and your gym setup. It is unbeatable. My favorite part about Fitbod is how it gives me my workouts using whatever's in front of me, whether that be my gym at home or if I'm in a place with zero equipment at all. It doesn't matter what you have. Fitbod will find a way to kick your butt. It's been my jet set secret weapon. Plus, it keeps your gym sessions fresh and fun by mixing up your workouts with new exercises, rep schemes, supersets, and circuits. So if you're looking to level up your fitness game, it has never been easier. Go check out Fitbod and get 25% off your subscription at fitbod.me/TNQ. That's fitbod.me/TNQ. Your journey to unstoppable games begins now with Fitbod.
Yeah, and that was kind of like a big thing for me in the beginning. Was like trying to get good at that, because the only thing I could say in the beginning was all the bad words. So
yeah, of course, that's all we ever learned. I don't know why do those stick. You know what I'm talking about? Like everyone knows bad words in every language, but you can't say, "Hey, how you doing? What's up?" I mean, I don't know. where that comes from, but
yeah, I
it's
don't
a
know.
thing.
I think it just sticks because it makes people laugh. I
Maybe
noticed
so.
that thing like in any country that I'm in, like whether it's like Peru or Ukraine. If I lead a conversation with like bad words, they always think it's hilarious because the accent's all screwed up.
Yeah,
sound,
right.
And you sound stupid, you know. It like same thing in America. Like if people like from foreign countries, when they start saying like bad words that normally most people from foreign countries don't know,
right?
It's hilarious. It's no different in Peru.
And you think they
here.
sound funny when they're trying to say English? You can't imagine how we sound trying to do that.
Oh goodness, ridiculous.
I know my redneck ass sound. That's a lot. I think that's why Americans don't learn different languages or even try when we get over there, because let me tell you something. We can do a number on some words.
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely.
When I found that out, that makes me laugh everywhere I go, because I try to hey, that sound good? No, I sound like a redneck. Just learn the,
You really don't know how you sound like.
Right.
You try your best, and it only comes till the feedback later. It's like, dude, I know you like said that with every ounce of confidence in your body, but that came off so bad, dude. Like,
right?
Goodness gracious. Like, yeah.
I think about that all the time with my Spanish. I'm like, I know that because you can see their face. Like, he's trying though. He's freaking trying. I think they dig that. I think when especially white boys that look like us, and you're like, hey, how you doing? If we actually attempt to get in there and try it, it means a lot. I think it means a lot to them. At least that's what I'm going with.
Absolutely. And I think especially, I've noticed that in like South American countries, they notice that and they appreciate it, but I felt they appreciated it even more in Ukraine, in my experience, just because I think it's just uncommon for Americans to be trying that language. I mean, everybody in grade school knows how to say gracias and adios.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
But like when it comes to like languages like Russian or Ukrainian, like it's like it blows their mind. Like, holy crap, you know Russian, you know Ukrainian, like that's crazy. So it was always interesting to see how they reacted to that and the cultural differences for sure.
Well, it's impressive to see somebody switch. It's so impressive to watch somebody switch languages.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, especially if you can't pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
What was that? Inglourious Bastards. That freaking Landa guy. I think he won an Academy Award for that. That sucker could change his from Italian to French to English to German. I mean, it sounded brilliant. It's something to see somebody do that.
And just like, I think it's another thing too, is Europeans, they find us hilarious in the fact that we only know one language.
Yeah,
like I know in Inglourious Bastards, they kind of hint at that, like where they're
Yeah,
making fun of Americans for not knowing one language. It's no different in Europe. It's like, if you know like 3 languages, it's like in Europe, it's like, so like, what's the big deal? In America, like you go to a bar and start you start ripping Russian, Ukrainian, and Spanish in the middle of a bar. You're like,
how about that?
Like goodness gracious, you're like a Rosetta Stone in that joint, you know?
Oh, you're the smart guy. It doesn't matter even if you're not smart.
Yeah.
If you speak 3 languages in America and you start rapping, you're like, guy's a genius.
Yeah. Speaking
This guy,
of,
what's using his Wheaties, man?
How did he do that?
Damn.
we have our sponsor is Babbel.
Yeah, you can go learn as many languages as you like.
Yeah, this is a perfect chance to plug. We have Babbel is sponsoring this podcast, so
I actually used them before we became a sponsor too.
yeah,
So
and you just go to babbel.com/TNQ, right?
Yep.
And you get 55% off.
so very rare do we get to plug something.
I know we never get to plug an actual sponsor, so I'm like, this is the opportunity.
All right, so I was watching a documentary the other day on Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he was talking about when he first came over here. I mean, he had vision. You talk about the American dream, is that sucker coming over from where he did, and he goes, I only knew a few phrases, and I picked those up, openers, like, hey, how you doing? How's your day? And it kind of starts from there, and then it just builds, because if you open up nice to somebody as opposed to the way we can normally do it, then it just, I don't know, man, it sets a tone, sets a precedent. I think people are more apt to talk to you. You feel that over there, even when war's on? Yeah.
So
absolutely.
At what point did you meet the guy that when you actually found your purpose there?
Yeah, so the story behind that's kind of funny too. I was in Kyiv, and Kyiv is kind of like the capital. It's the capital of the country, and at the time I had gotten there, like the war it didn't leave Ukraine, but like the ground assault near Ukraine had been pushed back into Belarus and into Russia. So as far as like the threat of like grad rockets and troops, that had kind of disappeared. But it's continually bombarded by missiles and kamikaze drones that come at night. So that I had that kind of experience there, but I was still kind of very far from the war itself. And I felt kind of like I wasn't really like finding that story because of the geography situation. I was far from it. So I started like browsing for cities. And this first idea that I had committed to, I had no idea. I had no idea where I was going, what city I was just going. I just picked one on a map. I'm like, oh, that looks close. We're going to go to Poltava, right? And so I booked a train to the city in Poltava. It's like about 200 kilometers from where the front was at the time. And that morning, that train was supposed to leave. I wake up and a song starts playing on my phone. And I didn't open my phone. I didn't hit play or nothing. It just started playing. And I looked over and it was this song. It was Odessa by Charlie Crockett. This country song that I had been listening to like the past like few days. And I was like, this is weird. Why is this playing? And I start to do it now. Like I'll like start picking out signs and I'm like, there's that city named Odessa in Ukraine too, isn't there? And that's a pretty big city. It's about 200 kilometers from the front at the time. And I said, there's probably people there that have these kind of stories and may want to talk about them. He's like, I'm gonna trust my gut on this one. So I canceled out the ticket to Poltava, and just same day I just went to Odessa.
Wow.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I had gotten there, same kind of situation in Kyiv, I was like, I can't really find anything. Nothing's really clicking. And then one day, like I remember sitting in the hostel. I had been filming a volunteer that day. So what he was doing, he was going around to local car shops and buying batteries to power artillery pieces. I don't know specifically what kind of artillery pieces, but he said you can slap a car battery in them and it gets them rocking and rolling. And I'd filmed him. He was doing all that, and I get back to the hostel, and this couple walks into the hostel. And they're carrying all these plastic bags. It looked like all their belongings, and it just looked like refugee, like kind of vibe. Because I had seen it before in Poland. I know, like when someone's like moving around a lot, and right. They had that kind of energy and vibe to them based off of what they were carrying. And I'm wearing this press pass at this time, and the husband of that couple walks over, and he just comes up and pops a squat next to me. He's like, hey, like, are you a journalist? And you know what? This press pass at the time, so I kind of gave him like a half confident answer because, I had just gotten this press pass from a Ukrainian friend that worked in the media there. So I was like, thinking, yeah, I guess I am, like, yeah, I'm a journalist. And he's like, I used to be a journalist. I'm like, oh, really? Like, where were you a journalist? And he said, Mariupol. I don't know if you guys saw it in the news, what happened in Mariupol, or if that was in the beginning of the war that made a lot of big headlines, and the horrible stuff that had happened there. And my understanding of Mariupol at the time was very similar to like an average American understanding at the time. I just knew like something bad happened there, right? Or something really bad happened there. I remember hearing about it in a hostel in Warsaw about what had happened there, about this story about this family who had to sleep in a basement for like, not even in a basement, but in like a shed with like this much airspace for like 3 weeks, because they were getting shelled so much that if they had even flinched out of that shed, they would just blown them to pieces. So they had to like sleep in this little shed for like a month. And that's the story. That's my understanding of what it was at the time. Like some bad happened there. And I was like, were you there when the invasion all started? And all of a sudden you could see his face, like he was trying to get it out in that moment, but there was this pause when he was like trying to do it. You could see his eyes kind of like wearing off and into the distance. And it was just this gut instinct at that time where it just felt like, oh my God, like something happened, and it was bad. And I instantly felt bad for him. And I was thinking, this might be it. It was just something in that pause and the way his body moved and his tonality and everything. I'm like, this is it. And after having like a minute conversation with him, I was like, you want to talk about it on camera? And he said, yeah, let's do it. And after that, went in and I started asking him questions about kind of what happened, like a pre-interview setup. And as he was telling me things before the interview, I was thinking, this is ridiculous and, you know, and horrific. And I felt that it needed to be told, and the rest is history.
So now it's a document. Are you actually greenlit to do a documentary? Will it go on to streaming, or how does that work?
It's done. I completed it back in May. The issue I'm having right now is getting it off the ground.
That's where we're going to help.
And yeah, it's just one of those things where it's just the financing of it. Because you have to understand, like, not only did I fund it, like every dime I had went into that film and being here. Because I believed in it so much, and I felt that everything meant it. You know, I'm on my last leg at this point, you know, because like I wanted people back home to understand, and I was willing to throw everything I could at it, like everything I had, like to pay for the engineers, the colorists, the sound guys, you know, to bring this thing together. Because you know there was a inflection point, like about 3 months into it, where I was like, am I just gonna slap this joint on YouTube, or are we gonna like go all the way? And I was hesitant to do it. And I remember showing like an initial screening. It was like the rough draft to a group of friends in the hostel. And there was something about his voice and the way he tells stories and what had happened that it just cut the lights out in the building, like, so to speak. It's just like everybody had their eyes. He had everybody's attention. And I looked at him like, there's something different about this. I don't know what it is. Like, I think it would be a disservice on my end if I hadn't just thrown everything I could into it, because it just had a vibe to it that, you know, I can't put into words.
That's how it works.
That makes sense.
Like everything that pushed you in that direction, you know, we've talked about it. And imagine everything you had up until that point was designed to get you to this one, like to pay for everything. You had just enough. Mm-hmm. So if you give everything you got into your purpose, and you know that God's put you on your path, it comes back around. That's where that faith comes.
Yeah, I think that was a really big thing for me. Like, it was, it's all the risk. I think with anything, like, it comes to the point where, is this rationally a good decision?
Right?
Rationality just flies out the door, dude.
Like, is this even happening? Are we doing this?
Financial planner come up to me, and I told him what I was thinking about doing. He's like, dude, you're out of your goddamn mind. But there comes to a point in time where it's like, this has to happen. And at all costs, like I can't stop. I can't like take a break, take a breath. Like, this has to be done. And even if it like just destroys me in every way possible, I think what's that phrase is like, find what you love and let it kill you.
Yeah.
Like that's literally what it felt like. Like at that breaking point, I remember I went back to Austin. I sold everything, my car, belongings, anything that I could scrap. I'm like, because I had to find a way to finish it the right way and to pay for the right people to get it done. And like, I knew at that inflection point right there, when I was like, this is going to take me down X path or Y path. Like, you know, you sell everything, you're going down the path of no return, you're burning the boats. And you know, that's always a scary decision. I mean, for anybody in life, I'm sure.
Oh, it ought to be if you know that's happening, that's how you know there's only one more direction to go. Mm-hmm. Anybody ever hear say that phrase, you're in the right spot. Mm-hmm. That's how you know it. Yeah. There's certain things that come up, certain phrases we don't ever use unless you're in the position that you got put in. And I've seen a few people in your position, they say that. And then just see what happens.
Yeah. It's like this faith thing, you know. It's, you know, I before ayahuasca, I grew up Catholic, but I was always a dude that like tried to skip church every time. Like, I was not like the super religious kid. But I think after ayahuasca, and then that's one, and then after those two events, you know, I kind of gave up thinking that like I'm in control of all of this. Like, at the end of the day, like, as much as I am in control of like doing these things daily to get this thing done, as far as like where I'm supposed to go and what I'm supposed to do and how I end up,
you can't control
like,
that.
That's not my job.
Nah, you just control how you handle it.
Yeah. It's this weird thing. It's kind of frustrating at times, the human condition, You're just like,
Oh, sure, it wants to fight it.
Yeah, just the way I grew up and the things that happened, I had no control over it. Like, I can't just stop this and go be a ballerina or something, right? Like this is it. Like, this is what whoever wanted me to do, and like I have no choice but to get it done. And that's kind of just the position I've gotten myself into here. So
what is the documentary about? Can you give us just a rundown on what people would see?
Yeah, so like quick little synopsis of it. It's about this Dima who I met. Basically, it's his recollection. So the film is an interview. So I did 2 1-hour interviews with him, and so the interview runs through the whole thing. But as he's describing his story, I'm piecing together clips to show what happened. The best I could, either cell phone clips from him or news clips, anything that he could give me to relay his experience. And the premise of his story is this guy's in Mariupol, the invasion starts, obviously they try to hunker it out for a little bit, things happen, and then they have to drive 300 kilometers through Russian occupied territory to get to safety over the course of 2.5 weeks. And everything that you see in war, they got to see.
Yeah.
Regular people. These aren't like journalists. These aren't soldiers. These aren't. This isn't Zelensky. This is nothing like what we see on TV. This is just a regular dude, and he's given the mic for 36 minutes, and he tells it how it is and tells like what happened, and I felt that was important to tell, because I think the way that I think news nowadays, I think we see the big heads, like we see the Bidens, the Zelenskys, the big heads. They're always talking about what's going on all the time, but how often are you giving the floor to a regular dude for 36 minutes and letting him go?
I mean, I was just curious as to why they're fighting, like from your vantage point.
Well, from their vantage point, people. I mean, I've been here for a year, and I practically live with these people.
That's what I was asking.
All Ukrainian people, right?
Yeah.
Life under Russian influence, for the most part, is one it's not free. Like, to an extent, I mean, when you look at it, like you can't really speak up against them economically. If you look at like how Russia runs economically, half of the population is dirt poor, and Ukraine is dirt poor, and they see people in Eastern or Western European countries in America living a great life, and they're like, why can't we have that? Like, why can't we live under this? Why can't we be in the EU like everybody else? Like, a great phrase that I heard from this one woman I met was, Ukrainian people feel like we're 10 years behind everybody. And it's perpetually like that. And we want to be able to have that, financial freedom and ability to move on. And not only that, just the history that Ukraine and Russia have, it's brutal, and it's in a lot of ways barbaric. What Ukraine has had to endure at the hands of what was at the Soviet Union ruled Russia, right? I mean, there's historical events that there's a lot of beef leading up to it, where Russians tried to suppress their language. In the early 1930s, there was a famine, a Soviet-controlled famine that took the lives of almost 4 million Ukrainian people. To the point where, I mean, when we talk about the Holocaust, that's only 2 million less than the Holocaust itself. I mean, this is the point where it was Soviet collectivization, where the Soviets came in and said, all of the peasant farmers in Ukraine, we're taking your land, we're taking your farm, and it's owned by the state now. And any grain that you produce, we're going to come by and collect it and send it back to the state, even if that means you starve. We don't care. Like, this is the government we're controlling now. And a year later, 4 million of their people are dead, to the point parents were instructing their children to eat their bodies when they died. Like, that's how desperately starving a lot of these people were, and they get taught this. They don't forget this. And there is always that tension that you see between Russia and Ukraine, where it's this debate on who kind of has like cultural influence, where Kyiv was born. Was it Russian? Was it Ukrainian? But you see kind of the things that happened at the hands of the Russians in Ukraine itself. They don't want to be a part of that anymore. I mean, Russians used to send Ukrainians to labor camps a lot. Like Russians were the concentration camp, how do you say it, aficionados before the Nazis did it. They were the ones that had the labor camp set up, if you spoke out or tried to act out. And that's just the thing that, over time, like it grows on them, and they don't forget that, and they want to be a part of something new, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's perpetual. I mean, they're kids on the ground that unless you destroy the entire population, they're never going to get over that.
No.
I mean, you said they've been fighting for forever. That's what this is. That's how that works. They're just breeding a new population, and people hate each other.
Absolutely. I think it's just the Ukraine and Russia. It's just like this. Ukraine has, when I read about it a little bit of Ukrainian history and their history, and for like 1,000 years, it's very much been this. They're trying to get freedom. They try to call on someone more bigger and powerful to like make a deal with them to help give them their sovereignty in exchange for something. And most of the time, most of those guys end up not holding up their end of the deal, whether it be with the Polish people, the Lithuanians, the Swedes, even the Russians at one point, the Ottomans, like the Ukrainians were always trying to switch teams back and forth over the course of 1,000 years. And they never really got it. They got it briefly during the First World War, like towards the end of it. And then right when the Soviet Revolution happened, then all of a sudden the Bolsheviks came rolling through, and then it was just right back to square one again. So like they've been always trying to gain that freedom. And it wasn't until the wall fell in 90 when they got it back. Yeah. And then to 2014, now they're seeing this thing, like right when they start to go down that election route. Yeah. That all of a sudden it just gets stripped away, and now you got a full-scale ground invasion into Crimea, into the eastern parts of the country. But it's also very complicated, and it's because there's so many like moving parts involved in the conflict itself. But there's a lot of people that do believe in it, and that's the overall idea that I've gotten from it, sure. The
one thing about Americans don't like is we don't know what's going on. Like if you ask one person, they'll give you a different answer. Like, why are you all even fighting? Mm-hmm. And I mean, we get the Israeli, what's going over in Gaza. I can understand that. But I haven't gotten a clear answer on why Russia and Ukraine are going at it. And I don't think that's the thing about war. I mean, I don't think it's just who freaking knows.
Yeah, it's so tricky. I think at the end of the day, as time went on, Ukraine was really pushing for that democratic feel. Because after the Soviet Union fell, Ukraine became a very easily corruptible country. Sure. Because all of these big business wealth guys, they started taking all of the state-owned Soviet machinery. And started just producing all of this money and like condensing the power into one point, and there was tons of corruption. And this is just something that Ukraine has struggled with for years. And they wanted to get more into that EU style of living, where there's more regulations, there's more corruption, has less room to breathe. Because obviously corruption is in every country, it doesn't matter where you are. Right. But there's just some countries where they clamp down on it harder than, for example, Ukraine or a country in Africa. Like there's levels of corruption in America, sure, absolutely, but compared to a place like Ethiopia or like a Ukraine, like it's nowhere close. And I think that they're trying to lean towards more of that influence. And the moment they wanted to, Russia started seizing their land and started funding a war in the eastern part of their country. So they see that it's like we're trying to break free of this, and we can't. I kind of have a little analogy for you. It's like Ukraine is in a relationship with Russia for a long time. It's toxic. It's a real toxic relationship. And they see the West. They see how they're living. They see the kind of prospects that they have. And like, you know what? I think I want to go and have a relationship with the West here. But as time goes on, trying to break away from that relationship, the Russians do not like those people in the West. They don't like the prospect of their baby Ukraine getting into a relationship with them. And it's a part of, obviously there's some security concerns, but a part of me can't help but believe that there's some sort of like emotional connection to Ukraine as a country.
Yeah, sure.
Having them under that influence for so long.
That's a great way to say that.
Finally getting to a point, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously they say the security concerns, they say the Nazi stuff. And to me, it feels kind of fluffy. And I feel like it's not really getting to the heart of what's really why they're doing it. But that's kind of like my overall kind of like journalistic take on it.
That's how I needed you to hear. I needed to hear it that way from you, just to kind of get a perspective. That's what I was asking. So is it almost like if Arizona tried to go to Mexico and the United States is like, yeah. I mean, it's that kind of relationship. You know what I'm talking about? Or if California or if New York tried to go somewhere else and the States just... that's what I was curious. I was like, explain it to me like that, where I can hear it like that. And you did it perfectly. Like, so you got a volatile relationship between a guy and a girl. Another dude shows up. All right. We get it.
Yeah, it's like the United States, like hate. For example, in this scenario, the United States just hates Mexico. Like, you guys really suck, and they've been in a relationship with Texas for a long time. All of a sudden, says Texas is like, I've had a bad relationship with America for a very long time. I'm seeing how Mexico's living. I really like the way they're living. I know that they have a bad relationship with the United States, but I don't like the way I'm living so much. I'm willing to break off this relationship and try and join them. Mm-hmm. And now we're kind of seeing the repercussions of someone not doing whatever they can to not let that happen. Yeah. If that makes sense.
That's a great way to say it. No, that explains it a lot better. People can understand that.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what war is, like a relationship. Somewhere, our elders got pissed, couldn't communicate. They couldn't talk it out, so this is when they send the young ones in and we fight.
There's a documentary on kind of the history of Ukraine and the war and all of that called Winter on Fire. Have you seen that?
No. I have, yeah.
I watched that right when the war first kicked off, just to kind of understand what was going on, and I feel like that explains basically what you said about like the toxic relationship. It was just a really
it's a great way to
good way for Americans to understand what was going on over there. But about your documentary, how are you planning on getting your financing? Are you gonna do like a Kickstart program, or are you wanting like a big financier to come in and just...
You know, the thing is the only thing I knew is like I needed to get eyeballs.
Yeah.
Towards to not only what I was doing, you know, personally, but to the film itself. And the reason I made that video in the first place, I didn't want to make the YouTube video that I put out. Like, I was scared as hell to put that thing out there. But a part of me felt that I didn't have the juice to get the film seen. So all I'm trying to do is grab eyeballs at this point, because, you know, at the end of the day, if you get eyeballs, then other people will become interested in wanting to see to help you out with a film, or even to kickstart the thing, because at the end of the day, more than anything, you need eyeballs. Yeah. And that was kind of just my approach to it. And at this point, that's all I'm trying to do, is just get as many eyeballs on, you know, what I'm doing and on the film itself, you know, as possible.
Can we see it?
I can send you a link. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the most powerful way to do it.
Yeah.
Because word of mouth. Once somebody lays their eyes on it, and then all they have to do is send it to somebody. And most of that stuff happens when you don't know. And it'll, just like things landed at your doorstep, other things will too. Someone will get an eye on this thing, and they'll help you. That's the one thing that these podcasts can do, man. They can get the word out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we would love to see it if you're willing to show it to us, and then we can talk after this and see how we can help, you know, share it with other people that would be interested in help funding it.
Yeah, so you have something set up so people can follow you right now, or anything, or we're in the process of doing that?
Yeah, so I got a website for the film. There's an email list that you can sign up there to get on to the email list for like release updates. You know, obviously I also have the YouTube video. It's kind of like an intro to what I'm doing. The link's there as well to the website. That's kind of what I'm at the stage I'm at right now. Like, the film's done. It's ready to go. It just needs to get the funding to get that thing off the ground, all the licensing and the insurance costs that come with putting out a film. You know, that's just the only thing. I just got to get that off the ground at this point.
Yeah, roger that.
That's awesome. Well, we send it to Hunter, and we'll
tell us the email address out loud so they can hear it.
The website address.
The website, excuse me.
The website is dimafilm.com.
Dimafilm.com.
And that's DIMA.com.
DIMAFILM.com.
Yeah, Dima Film.
Dima Film. Okay.
Roger that.
And what's your YouTube?
YouTube is at I am Nick Allard. But if you just on Instagram, I'll have the YouTube link there. So if you just follow me, you find me on Instagram at I am Nick Allard, IAMNICKALLARD on Instagram, and the link will be in the bio there for sure.
Awesome.
Man, you're still on your path and you're still learning. So I'm not going to ask you what you pulled from all this just yet, because it would just be an interim thing. But if you want our listeners to know if you wanted to pass something to them from over there, from your perspective, what would that be?
This is very real. And I understand that, the one thing that obviously, the big elephant in the room is why is this being funded? And obviously everybody has good reasons for it. I'm in tune with what people are saying in America about it, and I understand them. And I think that, obviously they have a lot of concerns, like where the hell is this money going? Why is it going? And what's the purpose of it? And obviously, the film wasn't made to sway people's opinions or to make them want to keep this thing going. It was more so just to be informed as to what's going on. And if I had a message to anybody, just don't forget about it. You don't have to be, posting Ukrainian flags in your Instagram bio and all of that, but just everybody's got a life and they got things to do. But just don't lose sight of it, because I think that there are people dying here in numbers that the world has not seen in 80 years.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking at the casualty statistics now. We're looking at collectively 500,000 people.
And growing.
I mean, if we want to put that into scale, I mean, in Iraq, not even to belittle Iraq or Afghanistan at all, but, a total over 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, we had, I think it was 8,000, if you correct me, 8,000, 10,000 KIA?
Yeah, maybe.
Somewhere around there, maybe more. And we're looking in Ukraine in about a year and a half, and we're approaching 500,000 people.
Is that split down the middle between Russia and Ukraine, or is that favored?
Split down the middle. I think it's two. I think it's nobody really knows.
Yeah,
I know Ukraine is losing a lot, and I know Russia is losing a lot, and both sides are not really transparent at all as to exactly how many have been
What's
lost.
the morale like on the soldiers' front between the two? Are they starting to get demoralized on the front, or getting tired of this, or are they still fired up?
I would say it's hard to tell. I was in Zaporizhia, which is about 100, an hour and a half car ride from the front line. I spent that time in a hostel there, and all I can speak from my experience is just being in there, in a hostel full of soldiers this time, Ukrainian soldiers, and it was like looking at ghosts.
Yeah.
Everybody in there is exhausted, and you talk to anybody that's out there, it's been going on for a year and a half. A lot of their friends have died. A lot of them are exhausted. I run into Ukrainian soldiers that tell me 80% of my unit is dead.
Yeah.
Or I'm the lone survivor of my squad that I had. And I'm not going around trying to find these people. I'm just running into them randomly.
Sure, that's why you're over there.
All the time. And they're telling me the stories of what happened to them. And it's barbaric and it's horrific. But the one thing I've noticed in each one of their stories is that they all believe in what they're doing.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's just taking a cost.
So do you think that this storytelling has given you purpose enough to keep going to other war zones? Do you see yourself going to Israel, to Taiwan, to other places that are seeing conflict?
I think at the end of the day, it's not really up to me. I kind of have reached this point in my life where it's wherever he wants me to go, right? And I believe in what I'm doing. But at the end of the day, if whoever up there wants me to go to wherever to get something done and to tell a story, I'll do it.
That's how it works, brother. That's awesome. A great answer.
Thank you for coming on and sharing your story. And we really hope that this gets...
Yeah, we'll help you any way we can.
Yeah.
Getting the word out. Get some eyeballs on it, like you said.
That.
You bet, brother.
Thank you for calling in from Ukraine. I know it's pretty tough out there, so stay safe. And I'll add his links and his Instagram in the show description below. So go check that out. And cannot wait for this documentary to be up and running and for everybody to get to experience this. So with that being said, we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.
This is the Team Never Quit podcast. So buckle up, Buttercup.